Hi guys, this is Lalana. Thanks for tuning into the Sovereign Path. So today we're going to talk about boundaries and setting boundaries. I've been hitting this topic a lot with a lot of my one-on-one coaching. This topic comes up a lot, so I think it's important that I hit on it in a video for you guys. And so first I want to say, like, this is going to be different for everybody, so that's why videos like this are potentially slippery slopes to make sometimes, because they are so nuanced, because what is a trigger for one person is not necessarily going to be a trigger for another person. So it's not a one-size-fits-all path. It's not a one-size-fits-all, woundings or karmas or traumas. So everybody's going to have different things that are coming up for them, and they're all going to be dealing with them in different ways, right? Boundaries being one. So this is just going to be like a brief overview. This isn't going to be like an inclusive, kind of situation. So just keep that in mind. This is just like for an overview. So when we're talking about setting boundaries, and like I say, I have a lot of people that kind of wonder, like, what is this? And they'll have friends saying, well, you need to set your boundaries with your twin flame, or you need to have stronger boundaries with them, or you can't be letting them come in and out of your life like that, or what's really going on. And granted, these are from people who don't necessarily understand what the twin flame path is. Some of them do, but usually that's not the case. And so they're working from that 3D paradigm of rules and regulations and how it has to do with 3D partnership, right? That's all fine and good. But the twin flame dynamic is not a 3D partnership with a karmic or a soulmate or a non-soul family member like we have experienced in the past. This is a dynamic that you are experiencing with your same consciousness, with your same soul. So due to that, the boundary line that is going to be sort of set is going to be different for everyone. So to give an example of this is, because this is what comes up a lot in coaching. And so when we're talking about intimacy with the twin, right? I get a lot of questions about this. Intimacy with the twin and setting boundaries in regard to that. Having the twin come in, like in and out, and having intimate encounters with them and things like that. And then they sort of ghost again, or then they say they just want to be friends, or, whatever. They just, all that kind of stuff. So I've had a lot of people ask, like, how do I set boundaries with this? What am I looking at in regard to, do I let them in? I haven't, seen them in however long, and they come in and then everything's fine for a few days, and then the triggers come back up, or the thoughts come back up, or whatever else, and I spin out, and then the masculine is, gone, takes off again, whatever. So should I just not have any intimate encounters with them? So this is one of those things that I have to say, like, for some people, having intimate encounters with your twin isn't a trigger. For some people, it doesn't trigger them whatsoever. They don't have that kind of like emotional investment that's saying, okay, now we have to be in a committed partnership. And so for people that are like that, this is not the same kind of boundary for people who are like, okay, we're being intimate now, and so that means I want this to show up in a committed way, or I want this to show up in a 3D relationship way, similar to how I've experienced in my past. And so now I start getting in my head about that. And so now the fear-based energy comes up around that. And so now I'm back, out of balance, out of alignment, out of neutrality. And so then, of course, the twin is out of there, says they just want to be friends, whatever, however that works. So just have that awareness that for some of you, that being intimate with the twin, you're able to still maintain balance, and it's not going to throw you out of alignment. It's not going to like throw you into, okay, now the relationship is supposed to look like this, and so now I'm panicking. But for a lot of people, this is what happens. So there's a nuanced boundary right there for like what I'm talking about. That not everyone's boundaries are going to be the same. This is not a black and white situation. It's very gray. So whatever works for you may not work for somebody else, which is why we can't say, oh, well, you need to set boundaries with them because blah, blah, blah. Now, you need to set boundaries for yourself. And whatever those boundaries are that look like for you are not necessarily going to be what the boundaries look like for someone else. So the boundaries for you need to have the awareness. This is a super specific thing here. You need to have the awareness of when my twin comes back around, right? However that is. If the twins sometimes are constantly in your life, sometimes they're in and out, sometimes you don't see them for a while and they come in. However it works. When you're in that situation where you're feeling like, having intimate moment or about to have an intimate moment with your twin or whatever else, what is the energy coming up behind that? What is their energy coming in, right? Are they in their divinity? Are you in yours? Are they in their distorted energy? Are they in a low vibratory state? Are you? These are two very distinctive energies that I want you guys to feel into when you're talking about having intimate interaction with the twin and setting boundaries, right? If you are out of balance, if you are like immediately feeling anxious in that spinning energy, feeling like you can't hold your ground, you can't hold your balance, you're slipping out of neutrality, your mind is telling all sorts of stories, you're feeling like afraid, blah, 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 there's your boundary. That means that you are probably not ready to have that type of interaction with the twin because it potentially is going to spin you out, right? On the flip side of that, if you feel those things coming up and you're further enough along on this path to have the awareness that, okay, all of this stuff is coming up for me now, so let me work through this, right? I see all the triggers coming up. I'm aware of all the triggers coming up, right? This is why I'm saying this is nuanced. It depends on where you're at on this path. If it's going to completely spin you out and throw you back into the dark night, then there's your boundary. That means, yeah, you probably shouldn't be having intimate interaction with the twin at that point. If your energy is out of balance and, fear-based and all of that, and so then obviously that's the way that their energy is coming in as well, that's probably going to throw you out of the loop or into the loop or however you want to say that and whatever. But if you're in a situation where you're noticing this stuff coming up to the point where you're saying, okay, wait, I need to get myself in check. I need to take a couple steps back because I'm noticing all of this fear-based energy coming up, and you'll get really, really very familiar with what your own shitty energy feels like, right? All of us will get very familiar with what that energy feels like. And you'll get to the point where you don't like to feel it anymore, right? I used to refer to it as a sticky wet coat. I didn't want to continue to have this sticky wet coat on. And so it got so nuanced that I would feel immediately what that energy felt like. And so for me, it got to a point where I was just like, I know exactly what this is. I know exactly what's coming up. And so that means I need to deal with what's coming up, not deal with what's coming through for the twin, right? This is another boundary. So this is the awareness, right? So we have the one boundary that we're talking about when you're flying off into Crazyville land, probably not the best thing to engage at that point because you're not in a situation where you're balanced enough within to be able to pull it back, see what's happening and work through it, right? But if you're in a stage where you are able to feel that energy come up, you know exactly what that is, and you're just like, no. So I'm feeling this coming up for me. Now I need to deal with it. Now I need to work through it, which means I can't really deal with you right now because that's not in my highest and best good, right? You can say it however you want, whatever, right? That's not in my highest and best good. But the fact that you just triggered me is in my highest and best good. This is hugely important, right? The fact that you just got triggered by that potential intimate interaction and you noticed it and you felt it come up, that is where your healthy boundary sits, because that's where you have the conscious awareness to be like, okay, that means I need to peel this layer off. There's something that's still here that is triggering me about this interaction. And so I need to sit with me allow this energy to come up, feel what's coming up for me, and deal with that, right? That's when we have like that heightened awareness of, wait, this is all about me. And so I need to deal with me right now instead of having this interaction right now. Because just the like awareness or the thought or that energy of having that intimate interaction has thrown me into a trigger. Does that make sense? And so that means let me deal with this trigger right now, because this is the most important thing. The trigger is the most important thing. When you can see that, when you notice it and you feel that energy coming up, that is where you need to be. That energy is where you need to sit, to deal with, to clear, to transmute, to release, right? So we need to have the awareness of boundary is not always saying no. Nope. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's saying, okay, this is coming up for me. So I need to do me right now. I appreciate, you coming over. I'm not like, being a bitch or pushing you away, but I need to deal with me right now. So that's it. This is my stuff. I'm seeing and I'm feeling it come up. So here's two camps, right, of the boundary line, the way that I would describe them. These things are endless. So I'm just saying, I'm just giving you guys a couple examples. Everybody's different. So the other camp is having the awareness now that I'm able to hold my balance, right? I'm in neutrality. I'm able to hold my balance. And so when the masculine comes in an intimate way, this isn't going to throw me off, right? Having that awareness. This isn't going to throw me off. I'm basically coming into inner union. I'm balancing things out. I'm not really having that surge of sticky, wet coat, yucky energy coming up. I'm good and I'm fine with it. And so in that situation, when you can hold your ground, right, you can hold your balance and your neutrality, then at that point, you can use your discretion of how you want that to play out when you know that you're able to hold it. So there's I can't hold my balance at all. I'm still in addictive, chasing, freak out, panic energy that says probably having those intimate interactions is not in my highest good right now because I'm not dealing with myself at all. I'm just completely racked, which is fine. That's just what happens in these beginning stages. In these midway stages of being like, okay, I'm really getting that nuanced feeling of knowing what that energy is that's pushing up behind these emotions, these thoughts. And so now I know that when that happens, I need to deal with it. And so that means I'm setting that healthy boundary to just do me and to come back into me. And then the later stages on this path where you're coming into inner union, or potentially if you're completely anchored in inner union, where the interaction with the twin in that way is not throwing you out of alignment because now you've collapsed separation and you know that this is you, right? This is one soul, one consciousness. And so there is none of that separation of feeling, oh God, what now and what happens then, right? And so just having those awareness of those nuanced places on this path, and like I said, this can play out in lots and lots of different ways. I'm just giving a few examples here. It's not about, right? And this is what I keep saying. It's not about what the twin is doing. It's about where you're at. So if you feel that the twin is coming in like a distorted energy, then that's pretty much saying like, no, because that's showing me that on some level here, this is still out of balance, right? We're still in separation on some level. And so this probably isn't my highest good. You're still going to get the trigger. You're still going to get the reflection, right? You're still going to have that reflection that you need to work with. So it's not a matter of saying, well, if we're not intimate, and then that means that next layer isn't going to come up for me to transmute. It's still going to come up for you because you're going to have that trigger. You're going to have that reflection come back to you regardless of whether that's an intimate situation or not, right? And so having those different sort of categories of seeing, what is in my highest good in this moment. Not what's in the highest good for the twin. Not like, well, I'm afraid that, if we're not intimate, then that means that, they think that I don't love them or I don't want them or blah, 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 blah. That's the thing about this that can be that slippery slope. It's like, you need to be like, what's best for me? How am I in love with me? How am I staying with me? How am I being committed with me? How am I being in the best timeline, the highest timeline for me? Because at the end of the day, that's what the twin is going to follow. one energy. That's what the twin is going to follow. So if we're in a place where we're always feeling like we're afraid that we're going to lose them if we don't, if we're not intimate with them, then that's the pattern that's going to continue to play out, right? Because that's the energy that you're projecting. That's what you're feeling. It's that fear-based thing. If you're in a place of saying, I'm coming into balance and I'm starting to really understand how energy works and I'm starting to feel this when this comes up and the twin comes in, then the twin is going to reflect that as well. The twin is going to reflect where you're at, right? So just have that awareness. Where you're at is dependent upon what kind of boundary you feel you want to set. And there's also the awareness of, am I setting a boundary from my highest vibration? Like, am I setting a boundary because I'm an inner union? So this will be later. I'm an inner union and I'm completely in self-love. I'm completely fulfilled within. I feel just completely complete and whole. And I just choose to stay in my highest timeline. I choose to stay in my higher vibration, right? When you're in this place, and there are a lot of twins that are in this place, divine feminine, due to the timeline lag of the twin of the divine masculine not catching up as quickly to the feminine in these situations, where the masculine still might come in and they still might be in a higher vibratory state, or they still might be, in more of a divine state, but it's still in that place for some feminines that are like, yeah, I can see the changes that are going on with the masculine now that I have completely anchored in inner union and I'm feeling just like amazing. And I can see the changes that are happening within them, but I still don't feel that resonance to want to interact in that way because I still feel like I need to stay in my own lane, right? And a lot of feminines will get into this point where they'll feel like, I need to maintain this. I need to maintain me until I know that I'm completely solid, that I can't be rocked, that I can't be tipped over, that I can't be pushed out of alignment, that any interaction that I have with them in an intimate way, I need to know for sure that I am good and solid and balanced and complete on my own. And in that case, there will also be feminines who are just like, I need to keep the intimate interaction at bay for now because I need to just really, really focus on my inner union, our inner union, and make sure that that's completely anchored. So hopefully that gives you guys a little bit of understanding. It's the energy behind the boundary, right? It's the energy behind the intention of that boundary that's really important. And the conscious awareness of where you are energetically on this path is really, really important. And that's why I say in the beginning stages of this, if we're still in addictive energy and the throes of hell and all that kind of stuff, it's not going to be nuanced enough energetically for you to be able to decipher what this energy is yet, right? And so this is how a lot of times the feminine gets in these loops and the masculine is coming in and out and in and out and in and out. And although this is pushing up a whole lot of layers for us to clear and transmute and deal with, and in that way, it's positive because it's pushing things up. But if it continues to be a cycle and you find yourself continue to go round and round and round, and it's always like it feels good and then you fall down again, and it's like the constant pendulum swing, and you don't feel like you're getting traction and moving forward because you're still really attached to those interactions with the twin and you're still waiting for them to show up and you're waiting to have those types of interactions, then that's probably when you need to put on that brake, right? That's when the boundary needs to be set, because at that point the path still hasn't gotten to the place where you've recognized that it's within you, that it's you. This is a you and you game. And so at that point in those beginning stages, when it's still about the external twin, those boundaries probably need to be a little more lined in the sand than they do as you continue to progress on this path and you fully start to anchor your balance, your neutrality, your inner union as you move, through your ascension path. Then it's just going to be easier to hold. And then, as I said before, the interactions with the twin, once you're anchored in inner union, they're just going to be natural. There's going to be a point on this path where you're not having to pay attention to what your thoughts are doing anymore, or what your emotional body is doing anymore, or transmuting energy anymore, and all of those sort of things. There does come a point on this path where it's just your natural default system now. And when you get into the inner union, it becomes just your anchor again. It's because now you're literally vibrating at a different frequency. Then a lot of the things that we are learning as we're going through this path, they just start to become innate, right? They just start to become what you are again. And so we don't have to be like kind of figuring these things out or thinking about them or having that awareness or paying attention to the energy. But as we're going through this, yeah, it's really important that we really start paying attention to what's coming up for me somatically. What am I feeling? What's the energy that's pushing up behind this? Where am I feeling it? What's that icky feeling doing? What trigger is that showing me? You know, how am I like not holding my boundary? How am I not holding self-love? You know, where am I giving my power away? Where am I not standing in my sovereignty, right? And as I said before in the videos way back, it's not in like a bad bitch way, not in this like, I'm gonna hold my ground and I'm gonna like make sure that everything is, you know, I'm just gonna like, because when we do that, that's actually closing off the heart. That detachment energy of sort of shutting things down and putting up those walls. So, you know, we have to have that awareness of this is a very nuanced path in regard to allowing the heart chakra to continue to expand, to continue to open, right? Allowing the higher mind and the higher heart to come into that congruency and all of those things, so that we're not feeling like the ego mind and the programming patterns are trying to override that because you're still feeling like hurt and frustrated and annoyed. And although it is a normal reaction for us to put up those walls and to push, you know, the twin away and to hold them at bay and all of those sort of things, it doesn't mean that like holding a physical boundary is not the same thing as shutting your heart down. Does that make sense? So it's still like allowing your heart chakras to stay open, because your heart chakra is your connection to God. Your heart chakra is your connection to source. We don't want to close that down, and we don't want to look at the heart chakra as being like, well, if my heart is open, then that means my heart is open to my twin, and I'm trying to shut my twin off, or I have to hold this boundary, and so I don't want them to come in. So having that awareness that that's still running separation from the mind, that is saying like, I can separate me from them. We're moving into the awarenesses that you are the same consciousness, you're the same soul. So you also are the same heart chakra, right? You also are the same heart chakra. So you don't want to be trying to shut the twin off by shutting your heart chakra down, right? That can work in other things in the past with 3D, with, you know, the karmas and the, you know, soulmate stuff, although don't do it with that either. But I'm just saying that can be like our natural go-to on the, you know, that's just our defense mechanism. You don't want to do that on this path. And so I'm not inferring that when you set a boundary, that means that you're shutting them off and shutting your heart down and all that sort of stuff. It means that you are staying in your love. You are staying in your love, and all the love that is the both of you. You are staying in that love within you, and you're bringing that love back to you, and you're staying in your neutral, loving, sovereign place, right? Hopefully that makes sense. So that's what I have for you guys. I hope that you have an awesome day.